Hey there, ass kickers. So you may be surprised to have either gotten the notification that there is a new podcast episode, or maybe this landed in your inbox this morning. And yes, this is not my norm. This is not what I had planned for you. As you can see, it's podcast number 103.5. I wanted to send you something because my heart told me to do so. I have no other reason than that. And this is not a 100% prepared episode. I have just a few notes and things to say to you that I felt that were necessary. You may have noticed there was no intro on this episode, and that was not a mistake. I just wanted to get this going and send this out to you, and it's sort of a special edition of the podcast. Not my norm. And where I want to start with it is in 2008, I had a mentor tell me, she said, when your blog starts to grow in popularity, stay away from topics revolving around politics, religion, and race. It's too risky, and one wrong move can absolutely ruin your reputation. And this was sort of the beginning of when people were starting to build online audiences, and I was starting to watch people around me build platforms, and I took her words to heart. And she was trying to protect me, helping me stay on course, if you will, and advising me to only talk about personal development. However, for me to go on pretending like nothing is happening, to say nothing at all, I find completely unacceptable in myself. How can I tell you to stand up for what you believe in, to practice courage and follow your intuition, if I'm not practicing it myself whenever possible, whenever I am given the opportunity? So, that being said, two major things have happened recently in the US. I know that there are a lot of listeners, a lot of you who are not in the US, who may not have heard of what two recent tragedies have happened. So let me start with the most recent. And again, although I highly doubt you haven't heard, but just in case, this past Saturday, a man shot and killed 49 people and injured at least 53 in a popular gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. And this is heartbreaking, and this is infuriating, and it's scary. And if you're like me, you've been thinking about the victims' families. And if you're like me, you can't help but think about your own family. And I think about my own children and how I worry about them going to school. And when they get older, I will probably worry about them going to places like the movies and out dancing, and to places where they normally should feel safe and be safe. And many of us in this country no longer feel safe anymore. And I think back to when I was in elementary school, and growing up in California, we had earthquake drills and we had fire drills. And now, in 2016, my children have drills on what to do if there is a shooter in their school. And let me repeat that. In the United States of America, the land of the free, my children, and probably your children, in kindergarten and second grade, in elementary school, my children had a drill this year on what to do if there's a shooter in their school. And I'm not sure how to wrap my head around this. So this is not an episode about how pissed off I am, and this is certainly not an episode about how I think you should vote this November if you are a U.S. citizen. Right now, it's not a time for me to sway any opinions that you may have. This is an episode about what you can actually do. Because I imagine in all of your sadness, in all of your fear, in all of your anger, and whatever else that you're feeling, you also face a feeling of helplessness. So here's how you can help. And what's really helpful is if you go to the show notes for this episode, because there are really easy links for you to get to all of these places I'm going to tell you about. It's yourkickasslife.com/103-5. You have to put the -5 or you're going to go to a different episode. yourkickasslife.com/103-5. And one of the things is that you can give blood. I have a link directly to the redcross.org, and you may not live in Orlando. Most of you listening probably don't live in Orlando, Florida, but it doesn't matter. You can still give blood to help people and make a difference in your community. There is also a GoFundMe page to support the victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting. That link is in the show notes, and you can read more about exactly where that money goes on that page. You can find resources like finding a vigil in your area or adding one of your own if you go to weareorlando.org. Again, all these links are in the show notes. And if you have an opinion about it, I can't even tell you how easy it is to contact your state senator and tell them how you feel about gun laws. You can search by state. You can even find your representatives. Both of those links are in the show notes. And if you grab those emails, they even have a handy dandy contact form for you. And you don't know what to say, I have a link in the show notes where you can find a sample. You have to scroll down a little bit, but that is all in there. So the second tragedy that happened, well, it happened much earlier, but it was in the news earlier this month, is a young man named Brock Turner, who is a Stanford, or I should say was a Stanford University student, was found guilty of raping an unconscious woman. Again, if this is the first time you are hearing of this, please go to the show notes. There is a really great video that someone made where he basically sums up what happened. I think he sums it up very nicely about how everything went down, how he was caught, and other things that are in relation to that event. Brock Turner has been sentenced to a mere 6 months in county jail, which he will likely be free in 3 months. And there are so many what the fucks about this tragedy. One just small thing. I mean, there are so many, but one thing that Brock Turner has never publicly taken responsibility for his actions, blaming things like peer pressure and Stanford's party culture. And again, this is not an episode about how outraged I am, but for the record, I am. I think many of you are. And you're wondering what you can actually do about it. Well, here are some things. There is a link to the victim's story, and she is known only as Emily Doe because she wishes to remain anonymous. It is, I believe, a 12-page PDF that I link directly to. And it's important to read it because her voice is important and her story is important and it matters to all of us. Emily Doe is all of us. I read it, I believe it was last week or the week before, and it was almost late taking my kids to school because I just was so riveted by her story. I sat down on my bedroom floor and cried and read it. You can also sign a petition to have Judge Persky removed to the bench. Judge Persky was the judge in that case. There's a link in the show notes. Again, yourkickasslife.com/103-5 if you are not already there. And this is a really, really important one. And this one has to do with both of the tragedies that I have just talked to you about. There is a documentary called The Mask You Live In. If you have a Netflix account, you can watch it for free. You can stream it instantly on Netflix, or you can see it for $3.99 on YouTube. And both of the links to YouTube and the trailer for that documentary is in the show notes. And let me just quote Dr. James Gilligan, who is a psychiatrist and educator. And this is actually from the trailer. He says, "Whether it's homicidal violence or suicidal violence, people resort to such desperate behavior only when they are feeling ashamed and humiliated, or feel they would be if they didn't prove they were real men." So why is this documentary so important? And why do I feel like it relates to both of these tragedies? And why do I want you to watch it so much? Because I think that we need to do a better job raising our boys. Although both of the tragedies I just spoke to you about are different, they both involve violence perpetrated by men. And many of you are raising boys or know someone who is, or have some kind of influence on boys, whether it's a nephew or a brother or a student. And by watching the documentary, The Mask You Live In, you're educating yourself about what's important and what needs to change. All I'm asking is for you to start a conversation. That's how change happens. Change happens by small, grassroots vibrations that question the status quo, that shine the light on cultural and social problems, and open it up for a conversation. So I invite you to open up a conversation with people that you care about and that you trust. I'm not asking you to get into arguments with people that you know have completely different political, social, and cultural viewpoints than you do. I'm asking you to educate yourself about stuff that matters so we can have better conversations, so we can have better tools to talk to children and talk to each other. If we're going to take care of each other, if we're going to connect with each other, if we're going to walk each other home, these are the types of things that we need to do. And I appreciate you being here with me and holding the space for me to hit record and just start talking. And thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.